Welcome to the Route 64 tour. If you've seen any of our videos before, you've never seen anything like this.
The Route 64 tour is a really great way to see North Carolina, all the way from the coast to the mountains.
We are at Chubby's Tacos.
This is part of a rescue farm, Hearts Haven Rescue, and most of the animals you see that are here and a number more back up on the farm are rescue animals. And if any profits are made here, then that goes to support the rescue.
Welcome to the Route 64 tour. In this episode, you're going to find out how this railroad is connected to this statue, which is connected to a post-Civil War love story, which is connected to this street, which is connected to air conditioning. You're probably wondering what's so special about Route 64 and what makes it the ultimate adventure highway. Well, if you ever go across country on Interstate 40, you will see exit signs for Route 64 more than any other highway, even more than the famous Route 66, which doesn't cross paths with I-40 until you get as far west as Oklahoma. Route 64 starts in the beautiful Outer Banks of North Carolina and zigzags across I-40 all the way to the Four Corners in Arizona, where it turns into another highway to continue on into California. For this season, we're going to be concentrating on the North Carolina portion of Route 64. Highlighting everything worth seeing from the coast to the mountains. But our journey doesn't start in the mountains or on the beaches of North Carolina, but in a small town in central North Carolina that is about 8 miles north of Route 64. A small town named Thomasville.
I gotta go to Thomasville.
That's right, Thomasville, North Carolina, home of the oldest train depot in North Carolina, the state's oldest street festival known as Everybody's Day, and the world's largest Duncan pipe chair. Unlike the movie Cars 3, there is no Thomasville Speedway. However, Thomasville is just 30 minutes from two legendary motor speedways, Bowman Gray in the north and the Caraway Speedway to the south. We do have a few connections to NASCAR too, like Larry Thomas, Brian Vickers, and just over the county line is Kyle Petty, who actually starred in the Cars 3 movie as Cal Weathers. Thomasville, though a lovely small town, isn't quite the thriving town it used to be back when the factories were running at full force. Today, many of the factories that made this town earn the nickname Chair City are empty and abandoned. Thankfully, as the furniture companies were moving out, trucking companies were moving in. Old Dominion is one of the nation's largest trucking companies, and its main office is right here in Thomasville. If you ever see an Old Dominion truck out on the highway, Look on the door and you will see Thomasville, North Carolina right under the company name. But what does all this have to do with Route 64? Well, to understand that, we have to take you back in time where there was no highways, no paved roads, even before people had cars. You see, the first road to ever go through North Carolina was the railroad, and a lot of that came about because of this man, Jonathan Warwick Thomas, who founded the town of Thomasville. At the young age of 30, he had already become a successful businessman and even became a state senator for a time. It was during his term in state government that he saw the construction of the Carolina Railroad and made sure that the tracks went right through the middle of the town of Thomasville. These tracks are heavily used even today.
They gave him his orders at Monroe, Virginia. Said, Steve, you're way behind time. This is not 38, this is old 97. You must put her into Spencer on time.
The first record to ever sell over 1 million copies was a ballad about an actual train wreck that happened in Danville, Virginia. Had that wreck not happened, that very train would have traveled on these very tracks through Thomasville on its way down to Spencer, North Carolina, where all the steam locomotives for the Southern Railroad would go for maintenance and repair. The railroad made traveling fast and easy. For the first time, people could go places simply to see and explore, and be back to work on Monday. So American tourism was born. Hotels and restaurants began popping up in every town just to serve the constant flow of passengers coming and going. But all leisure travels came to a complete stop in 1861, when war broke out between the North and the South. To this day, the American Civil War remains the deadliest war in American history. Over 700,000 Americans perished in the Civil War. And though Thomasville never saw any battles, about 1/3 of the population was lost in the 4-year Battle of the States. It was right after the war, during the rebuilding of the southern states, that the story of Thomasville gets interesting.
The war was over, but there were a lot of open wounds still, both physically and emotionally. Families were trying to put their lives back together. Widows were trying to make ends meet. So you can imagine the talk of the town when rumors got out that the founder's daughter had fallen in love with a Union soldier.
At the close of the war, the wounded from the Battle of Bentonville were brought here and filled the Methodist and Baptist churches. The people had threatened to raid the tithes that had been collected, so we called for a guard, and Mr. Kramer's Union Company from Greensboro was sent here. My father, who always made the best of everything, invited them to stop at our house, and no one knows to this day how Mr. Kramer managed to get himself invited with them. But that was the beginning of our romantic courtship. And it was no secret how people felt about Yankees around here.
As the story goes, when the names were written in the family Bible, where all the marriages would be listed as people got married in the family, it's been told that right above the name of Jane Thomas and J.T. Kramer, it's written the words, "and it came to pass." You got to think about that for a minute. It came to pass. You know, bad things happen. Wars might even take place. Bad things have happened in our past, but it's important that we move on. It came to pass. Amid all the talk and taunting of the townspeople calling Mr. Kramer that Yankee, he stuck around and became a productive citizen of Thomasville, North Carolina. It is said that he ran a small hotel right where the Cross Ties restaurant is today, on the corner of that street that was named after him. In a small southern town, there is a street named after a Union soldier who after a while they grew to respect and love. One thing about Thomasville, if you come here, come hungry. We've got more restaurants than anything else here in this town. There's no bowling alley, there's no
Theaters or anything
there's
like
no
that.
theaters, there's no nothing, but we've got lots of restaurants.
We are at Cross Ties. This is a frequent place for us.
We love this place.
Yes, such good lunch. Thomasville is really a lot of fun on Saturdays. As you can see behind me, we're at Cross Ties Restaurant, which is where we had lunch today. And there's all kinds of little antique shops, thrift stores, things of that nature, consignment shops, lots of fun little things to come in and out of on a Saturday. We have a farmer's market right here in town that is amazing.
It's amazing how something as simple as a street sign can tell such an amazing story. But it's right on this very corner that John T. Kramer established himself here in Thomasville, which, as you can see, is a pretty bustling place on a weekend. But the story doesn't end there. Out of this unusual love, a son named Stuart Warren Kramer was born. Stuart would grow up to be an engineer who would claim 70 patents and totally change the textile industry with his air conditioning, a method of removing moisture from the air to keep textile mills running productively. He would also be the founder of Kramerton, North Carolina, which is just west of Charlotte.
I find it such an honor to be the daughter of the founder of one town and the mother of another.
Stuart was part of the major industrial revolution that took place just 20 years after the devastation of the Civil War. Suddenly, jobs that required hours of hard manual labor could now be done with a simple effort with the help of machines. During this time, Thomas Edison would develop his light bulb. Nikola Tesla would come up with alternating current. And it's during this time that the Duryea brothers would set up the first American car manufacturing company. At this time, horses or bicycles were still the main way to travel the roads, which were still mostly made of dirt and gravel. It wasn't until the mass production of the Model T Ford that cars became affordable for the average American, and soon it was obvious that better roads were desperately needed.
Roads of yesterday made into modern highways of today. Adventure and mystery around the corner.
That brings us back to Route 64, which until the construction of I-40 was the main way to travel east to west across the state. Originally, the U.S. highway system was a way of connecting old farm roads from town to town. There was no such thing as a bypass back then. If you came to a town, they wanted to make sure you saw everything that town had to offer. So the highway would often go right through the center of town. That is what makes the Route 64 so fascinating, because there's so much to see. As we leave our hometown of Thomasville, we drive down 109 to 64 East, where we come to a small brown sign on Route 64 that says Caraway Speedway. And after a few turns at the end of what seems like a residential street, you come to a place where legends were made. This is the Caraway Speedway.
You don't get much more North Carolina than this.
A lot of NASCAR legends got their start on this very racetrack right here. It used to be dirt, and then they turned it to a paved racetrack. During the Prohibition, moonshiners began a quest for the fastest cars to move their moonshine to customers while evading the police. It was this quest for speed that birthed the automotive racing system that would develop into NASCAR we know today.
Just say the moon was always shining on us. Huh? No, it didn't shine. We didn't have to. Oh, never mind. We ran moonshine, dummy!
This here is a bonus segment called Off the Path, where we're going to tell you about places that are really fun to explore but are not quite part of the Route 64 tour. Since we mentioned the Bowman Gray, we thought this would be a good opportunity to tell you about Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The Bowman Gray is just one of the many awesome places to visit in Winston-Salem. You can step back in time by visiting the historical village of Old Salem.
We're at the Old Salem Candle Tea.
See the beautiful lookout point at Quarry Park, or enjoy a baseball game at the Dash Stadium. But the most fascinating fun fact, in my opinion, is this building in downtown Winston-Salem, which gets a Father's Day card every year from the Empire State Building in New York City, because it was the inspiration for the design of the Empire State Building. Formerly known as the RJR Building for RJR Tobacco, it is now a luxury hotel where a room can cost an average of $200 a night. In the downtown area, there is one of the newest editions of the Mass General Store. Even though it isn't part of the Route 64 tour, it is a great place to see. As our journey along Route 64 continues eastward towards the Outer Banks, we come to our first campsite at the Parkers Creek Campground. Join us next time to explore the old-time S&T's soda shop, Jordan Lake, and the Carolina Tiger Rescue. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss out on our future episodes. Stay tuned for bloopers, and until next time, happy camping. The paved racetrack.
I've never been here, and I don't think he has either. Welcome.
You're qualified.
Awesomeness.
Very much. There's a farmer's market near here that is really great.
Start all over. Redone it.
You get a good view?